Deadlines, drop dead dates, changing the schedule to meet new requirements. Does it ever feel like there's a better way to do this? Well, there is, so stay tuned. Hey, it's Jamie, and today I want to talk to you about a topic that software developers often get really bored with quick, but is really the reason why if you're on a software project and you feel frustrated that everybody's trying to follow Scrum or Kanban or be Agile and it doesn't really feel like it, this topic I'm going to talk with you about today is often the primary reason for it. So I want to start this off with a question to kind of get you inside the mindset of somebody who's investing in software development. If you were going to put, let's say, $100 in as an investment, and the people you were investing with told you, we can't tell you exactly how we're going to use your $100, but at the end of the period we're going to use it for, we can give you back $200. Would you rather invest with that company or a company that says, give us your $100 and we'll tell you every 2 weeks what we're doing, but at the end of the $100 being used by us, you're only going to get $105. So you're going to basically get 5% return on investment. Many companies would choose the latter investment strategy, meaning they would prefer to know exactly what's being built and not make much money because of that predictability that they need, than to allow people to adapt and be agile, but potentially release things that are way higher impact and make much more money for the company. So let's start by talking about what is forecasting. This might seem like a silly question, but I just want to level set so that if you're new to this, you're speaking the same language as me. Forecasting basically is looking at past results as a way to try to determine what's going to happen in the future. Perfect example of this is someone who's trying to predict the weather on TV. They have to look at the past weather. Now, they use all kinds of sophisticated software and algorithms to try to guess or predict what's going to happen, but ultimately they're relying on past trends in the weather. If you were going to invest in a publicly traded company, let's say you're going to go out there and put your money into a stock like Apple or Microsoft or something like that, you're going to invest in that stock looking, hopefully, at its past financial results as an indicator of whether you want to put your money into it. How confident are you? So this leads me to my next point, which is, why do we forecast? Well, forecasting is about creating confidence. It's about giving the person who's put their money into investing in software development a good enough feeling that they can continue to keep their money in that investment and that they're going to get positive results from it. So how does forecasting and investing in software development in this way actually potentially create problems and ultimately create a team that becomes toxic? Well, the first of these is that unfortunately, most software projects, when they're kicked off, there is no past data to look at. There's no trend of this team, how have they done on this software project before? Because usually it's a new team, there's new skills, there's new technology that's needed. Even the business analysts, the product owners, the UX department, maybe people that talk to the customer may be new at talking to that type of customer. And so often we have to find a way, how do we create enough confidence in whoever's budgeting this software project that they're going to get something out of it when they have no past data to look at? And the way many companies have thought to do this is not through having past data that they can have the investor rely on, but to promise future deliverables getting done. Meaning they go to an investor and say, hey, we're looking at, building a new product, or maybe we're inside a company, we're looking at changing our product to try to meet some business outcome. We all got together and designed something, and here's how much it's going to cost. And then if the person is convinced enough that the design is a good idea, and often they have to just kind of trust you because they're not in that business, they're going to then want to know, as you're building the product, how do I know that you're becoming successful? And the way in software projects, unfortunately, that we do this today is we give a report of percent complete to whoever's investing in it. So if we originally spec'd out, let's say, a $200,000 project that was supposed to take 6 months to build or something like that, the person investing is going to regularly want to check in and know, how close to that 6 months am I and how much money have I spent, to give them an idea of, Am I on track for the project? And this is a totally sensible way to track progress on a fixed deliverable type of a product, something like, a football stadium that you're building, or a design for an automobile. But in software development, you can go back and watch my video on Agile budgeting. I go into this in a lot more detail. In software development, the characteristics of the type of work we create is totally different, and it just doesn't work to use percent complete as an indication that the project's going to be successful. And one of the biggest reasons for this is you can have a team deliver a project on time and in budget, and it fails in its market because what was built was not a good idea in the first place. So why is percent complete still sort of looked at as a viable way to report performance of a software development team? Well, part of the reason is there's really two places where most management or investors need to look at the performance of the team to make a decision, am I still confident enough to invest in the project? The first place is what I've already talked about, which is, do I even want to fund the project in the first place? And usually then you need to create enough confidence in that investor that the team that you've brought together is experienced enough, maybe some past projects that they built did a good enough job, but there's not going to, again, be any data that's available about how this exact team has tried to work on this exact product before because it's a new product. But the second place where forecasting is usually needed is in the middle of the project. Often the person investing wants to know, well, I've spent, let's say, a third of my money. How long is it going to be until all my money's spent? And am I going to get everything that was promised? And this gets to the meat of this video, which is I want to make sure I explain to you some of the serious problems and pitfalls with the way that investing is done if it's done based on percentage complete, and then tell you some alternatives. The first reason this is a really bad idea is that historically, you should be sold on this by now if you've been paying attention in the industry. Designing a product up front and committing to it just doesn't work. There's been so many failed projects. There's so much research about this. If you're not convinced by now, again, go back and watch, somebody else's video about this and then come back to this. But teams have to fail faster. They need to find out earlier in the project where they're wrong. They're inevitably going to be wrong, and then be able to adapt. And you can't do that without a bunch of stress and arguing and rebudgeting and frustration, and especially lost confidence if you're using percent complete of a big upfront design and budgeted and invested project on your team. The second reason this can create a lot of problems if this is how investing and forecasting is done on a software team is estimates, unfortunately, on anything innovative are really low reliability. I have worked on teams before where a project's being built and it's a brand new platform with a whole new set of team members, and the business has never even been, talking about products in this market before. So it's new to the business people, the UX people, the developers, the operations people. Everybody is basically new to this. And so the amount of mistakes people are going to make around test coverage and, coding standards and error handling and missed requirements is really high. And we have this myth that gets peddled around because it helps management feel comfortable, but it's a lie that if we take a new team and we have them build, let's say, a sprint together or do a few tasks via Kanban, they're going to work out all the problems with their process and then be able to look at, their other estimates for the remaining work and update it, and now they can meet all their commitments. And I can go into companies and I can help them do this. It's really, sprint planning, but I'm on this channel to tell you the truth. And honestly, it's bullshit. Every single sprint is new work. And you can go back again and watch that Agile budgeting video if you don't understand this. But if you're working in a manufacturing company where you're just drilling, holes into some part every day, if you get really good at that and that's all you do every day, you can estimate it, you can predict it, you can make it faster. But software development, every single thing we do is brand new. It's a new feature with new problems, with new things we need to uncover. And so we spend all this time pretending that we can eliminate enough certainty and get rid of enough variables to give us an estimate that's reliable. And oftentimes I work with teams where I talk to the software developers and they're basically like, yeah, the estimates are complete bullshit. We agree to them, but just because we're getting paid to do this project and we have to, they get in front of leadership in the daily stand-up meetings and, oh yeah, everything's on track. Yeah, that estimate looks good. But you talk to them privately and they're like, yeah, it's BS. It's going to take as long as it's going to take. I have no idea. And so, if that's the environment that people are working in, let's forget for a moment about, best practices in the Scrum guide and, who's telling you what you should do with flow state. And let's think a little bit about the people who are doing the work. If we've got people lying about how long things are taking, we've got people disregarding the whole process of estimation because they think it's not viable, and those are the people who are actually getting the work done, does it really matter if everybody in management thinks estimates are valuable and will work if everybody doing the work is basically telling them estimates don't work? So one of the biggest things that can cause a team to become toxic when they forecast and invest based on percent complete like this is that ultimately it encourages people to fight against each other, because if you're on the hook for an 8-hour task, and that's not just on the hook like you're trying to hit it within the team, but it's been committed to the business, and now you get interrupted and another team member needs help, well, you have to now overcome this really strong motivation to hit your deadline and instead overcome that to help somebody else and take away from the amount of time that you're already on the hook for. And I just find that teams that are measured this way, my last project was like this, where, oh, you're going to talk to another developer? Well, you better create a 1-hour task. People just don't collaborate well. They hate the process. They're trying to cover their own ass. And so if you really want software developers to work together well, the way to do it is to stop micromanaging them. When people go to college and they do a software project, they don't have their professor doing, Scrum stand-up meetings and checking on them every day. And when I got out of college, before Scrum was even available, we had a weekly status meeting. And the entire week up to that, people just worked on code and worked together and got into meetings. There was no, status reporting daily. I've worked on projects where 2/3 of the project, everything looked fine because people were bending over backwards, usually in management, to try to force developers to make stuff look like it was done when it was, to try to shift things around to make the burn down chart look like it's burning straight down. This is not a rare occurrence. A lot of companies do this, and they're doing it to keep confidence with the investor. And I just personally believe all you're doing in that case is you're delaying the inevitable failure of the project. And then that person who's investing is going to look at it like, well, why didn't you tell me earlier that there were problems? Well, they're not motivated to tell you earlier because the only way they can think of to keep the investor's confidence is to prove that you're still on track. And again, we're fighting Agile. We're fighting 20 years of software development history and lessons learned here. We can't big upfront design projects and be successful. So let's stop doing it. With that said, how can we provide confidence to investors without estimates? Well, the first way we can do it is we can look for people that already understand monthly and agile budgeting. If you're going out there and you're trying to start a software project, or you're maybe starting a software company and you're trying to get an investor to give you some money, if that person doesn't understand how different software development is and how we have to be agile and how they're investing in some projected business outcomes, not an actual fixed product with a fixed set of features, if they don't understand that, the amount of work it usually takes to convince somebody that it's worth even trying it is usually not worth it. You're fighting against years and years of programming that person has. And often they've been successful, at least from their eyes, if they don't know what's really going on prior projects that have been budgeted that way. So finding people that already know this is the first thing that you can do that will really help you be on a project that's going to be less toxic and it's going to be more successful and fulfilling. The second thing you can do to help back your company or team off the cliff of investing the way they have been maybe today, or get into a new software team that's doing it right, is to look into something called learning milestones. This is a concept that Ries, who wrote the book The Lean Startup, came up with. He's probably the most famous, well-known person in the kind of lean community. And he explains in that book specifically that instead of having investors look at how close a company is to getting something done when it's an IT type of company like software development is, you can give them learning milestones, basically scheduled periods by which the team is attempting to learn certain things about their product and their customer and then take action on it. And I would really encourage you to go check out his book. And it's not a software development book in that there's not code in this book, but it's specifically applicable to Agile and Lean. The examples he gives in the book are about companies he worked for that were building software products. I think you'll get a lot out of it if you read that book. But if you read that book and you kind of look into these things, what you're going to need to learn to do is teach your company or find people who know how to do this to create learning milestones on a roadmap, similar to how we would do, you may have in your company had product managers or, chief marketing officers or people like that put together a product roadmap. And it's basically like, by this quarter of this date, we want to have this kind of stuff going on in the product. And by this date, we want this kind of stuff going on in the product. And instead of having those milestones be based on the functionality that the product has to have, those milestones are based on when the team needs to have proven in the market that something that they did gave them a yes/no signal of if they're working and moving in the right direction. So why is this superior? Well, ultimately, learning milestones are superior because they divorce the commitment of an estimate from giving the investor confidence. And what does that ultimately do? Well, ultimately, that frees the development team up now to really be agile themselves, meaning if they know, well, I've got a quarter to hit a certain business outcome, they can try potentially hundreds of changes to the product in that time that they have and measure the impact until they actually get the business outcome that they're looking for. So it really gives the team the ability to use that money to get multiple tries to hit the business outcome. Versus, big upfront design product, there might be a bunch of assumptions in there that certain features are going to meet a business outcome, but there's no way to really try it until the whole thing's released. And in my experience, and I've talked in many other videos about this, customers will often demand things that once you deliver them to them, they don't even use. So we have to find a way to allow software development teams to work on code and build features, but not to the commitment of what a customer thinks they want, but rather to experiment and try some things until you find what they really are going to use, which may be something even that the customer doesn't even realize they need. So how's your company investing in software development? Are they providing forecasts to people that are percent complete based, learning milestones, maybe something we haven't even talked about today? Leave me some comments below. In my next video, I'm going to talk about commitments and how divorcing estimates from commitments is really what allows a team to be free to be agile, and how you can still report progress using learning milestones, but also use estimates within your team to get work done at a reasonable time without getting people to hide the state of the work, lie about what stuff is done, and not basically collaborate and help each other. So if you're new here, consider hitting the bell to subscribe. You can also listen on many podcast platforms. Just search for Healthy Software Developer and you'll find me there. So until next time, thanks.